Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, but there's no actual coffee. Each episode, we interviewed an expert in the field of law enforcement analysis to share their career-defining stories and to get their insights on the world. Please join us on recognizing and learning from these brilliant minds as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
Thank you for joining me. I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder, and today our guest has 18 years of law enforcement analysis experience. She is currently a staff operations specialist with the Federal Bureau of Investigations, specializing in violent crime, crimes against children, and human trafficking. When she's not working, you'll find her enjoying the great outdoors in northern Minnesota. Please welcome Mare Cunningham. Mare, how are we doing?
Hey, Jason, I'm great. Thanks so much for having me.
And I will address you as Mare from now on. So how did you get the nickname Mare?
So my name is Mare, and just throughout the years working with a variety of officers, short is better. So it's like, hey, Mare, I need this. Hey, Mare, I need that. And it just kind of stuck. So we went with it.
Okay. So pure laziness and nothing to do with the horse.
Right on.
Well, very good. Well, wanted to have you on the show today to talk about your contributions to the profession and your transition from local PD to working on a task force to working for the FBI. So let's go back and talk about how you discovered the law enforcement analysis profession and work our way to the present.
That sounds good. I kind of need a timeline for this. In fact, I did create a timeline for this. I first started off with the Minneapolis Police Department as a graphic design intern in 2000. And that was a part-time gig. And at the time, I was going to school at the University of Minnesota, and my focus was on rhetoric, on written and verbal communication. I thought, well, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but that would transition into something written or verbal. You're going to use that anywhere.
Sure.
And so I found an ad back in the day when you would look for jobs in the newspaper. So I found Minneapolis Police Department, and I was interested in graphic design as well. And so I looked at it, and it was with their Community Crime Prevention Safe Unit. So I interviewed for it and got the job and worked with a graphic designer in the crime prevention unit at Minneapolis Police Department. So that's kind of where that first started in 2000.
Okay. So for them, it was just creating graphics for their publications?
Right. Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Doing different drawings, creating brochures that the crime prevention team, which was a police officer and a civilian, could take out into the neighborhoods and meet with their block leaders and talk with them about the crime trends going on in their area.
Criminal justice is just an odd profession, I feel, because it seems like you could study just about anything in college and you can relate it into the criminal justice profession.
Right.
And it's just odd that way that you can study computers, get a job, you can study accounting, you can get a job, mathematics, get a job. It just doesn't seem like that's the case in other professions. Maybe it is, but it just, as you said that, I was like, geez, that's another, that's somebody that studying something differently and then has developed a great career in law enforcement analysis.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of different avenues I think you can go down with law enforcement.
Okay.
I had a few friends that were in law enforcement at the time, so I was introduced to that through them as well. It was a super positive profession to be in, and I was really excited about it. So I did that for a stint. I graduated from the University of Minnesota in 2001, and at that time I was interested in crime prevention because, of course, I had been an intern and saw the mechanics of that with the teamwork between the police officer and the civilian that were assigned different neighborhoods throughout Minneapolis. And I enjoy people, I enjoy law enforcement, and so that was a natural fit. So I interviewed for that position and got a job doing that in 2001, right after I graduated. So it was kind of a seamless transition.
Yeah. So what were some of the projects you worked for crime prevention?
So my partner and we would head out in the squad car and go to different neighborhoods, just kind of basically on patrol throughout the day. It was a Monday through Friday day gig, so of course that was fantastic. But we would meet with designated block leaders throughout our assigned neighborhoods and discuss different trends that were happening in their neighborhood. And at that time, this is kind of pre-internet or very early stages, so you weren't able to get information out through like an email blast or something like that. So in person was really, that's what we did. We were out with the public and out with our block leaders and discussing what's been going on. We also met with a lot of city council members and, just kind of getting the word out on what's happening in the neighborhoods. There were 27 teams at the time throughout the city of Minneapolis.
Okay. Is there a project that comes to mind when you think back about your time here? Maybe an issue that you had and what the solution was?
I think, one of the big things with crime prevention is, really being out with the public, but working with them. And National Night Out, of course, is a huge to do. It's a great way to bring neighbors that maybe haven't met each other out together, outside. Let's be out there together and discuss what's going on in your neighborhood. It's relevant. So, that was always an important night.
It is interesting to have a program to get neighbors to introduce one another to each other. That just seems kind of odd and not surprising, I guess. But
right, yeah.
I do wonder, though, I know in my neighborhood, since the pandemic, a lot more people are outside walking around and doing things. So I do wonder if there's going to be more of a community spirit, but it's not like, I guess, and when I think about it, it's not like I'm introducing myself. I just see people, the same people out all the time.
Right. Yeah. So I enjoyed that. It was fantastic. I'm definitely a people person. And so that worked really well. It was great to analyze trends back at the police station at our precinct and do up different charts and distribute them. We would mail things, snail mail things back in the day. But I enjoyed that. In 2003, unfortunately, there were some budget cuts in the city of Minneapolis, and our 27 teams were cut in half, which I was one of the newer members. So I was going to be out of a job. And
Bummer.
So, yeah, I was, fresh out of college, got student loans, and you're trying to make it. But I worked with someone at the city who, in the job bank, they called it. She called me and said that there was an administrative analyst position with Minneapolis PD, with the police department, in the narcotics unit. I wasn't really sure what that meant. Administrative analyst, what is that? What does that look like?
Yeah.
So I applied for it. There were 11 other people and they chose me. They were really looking for someone who was fresh, who didn't know anything, who didn't come in with preconceived ideas and I'm like, well, here I am. I'm a blank slate, ready to work.
They wanted to mold you.
Yeah. So it was a great group. It was all guys, which was just fantastic. The dynamic was great. There's no BS. They were just a really great group of guys. And when you think about jumping into this narcotics unit, for me, not having anyone there, you're jumping in the pool. Like you need to figure out what you need to do. You got to get out there, and talk with the guys and really be a part of things. So that was a great learning experience. And you probably know this too, Jason, but back in the days of faxing subpoenas and entering your incoming and outgoing tolls into Excel for analysis.
Oh, yeah. I laughed when I saw that. When you mentioned that in the email, I was like, yes. I spent many, many hours cleaning data that was scanned in because I was handed a physical printout of telephone tolls.
Right. Or, being super disappointed when the subscriber would come back to a payphone,
Yeah, or Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck.
Right.
Yes. It was a strange time back then trying to get a hold of information, analyze it, and identify what the number is and
Right.
thinking it's going to be, oh, there's so many connections. Oh, this is a really good hot number. We need to find out who this is. And then it's like the local pizza joint.
Right, exactly. It was kind of at that point where I thought, I knew some of the local analysts that I still know now. They're just fantastic. And a few of them had mentioned the Alpha Group, Steve Gottlieb, the Alpha Group. And I thought, I think I need to bump up my game with this. And so I sought out the certification through the Alpha Group, got my certification in 2007 with the California State University, Sacramento. So, and if memory serves, I believe Steve was one of the teachers that I had who was crime analysis applications, I think. But just fantastic. What a great program.
Nice. Yeah. We've had Steve on the show, and certainly a lot of people have taken his course. I have him as number 5 on my top 10 list of most influential at ACIA. So he certainly has put a dent in this profession.
You bet. You bet. Absolutely.
So I am interested, as you mentioned, this is an administrative analysis position, but telephone tolls, that's more tactical in nature and not administrative. So where did the administrative part come out of this position?
That came from people didn't know what to call it. I mean, think back to 2003, they really didn't know how to label that position. And so they left it administrative analyst. When I finally left, I worked with another gal who was in a different unit, and we were able to get the proper title as intelligence analyst for what we were doing. So
that's really interesting, because administrative and narcotics, I'm like, okay, are you just putting together stats for arrests, or are you, I was trying to envision what that would exactly mean. So that's interesting that just had the wrong designation, essentially.
Well, and I think that's also a good indicator of what things were, years ago, decades ago with police departments. They weren't really sure what that position looked like, let alone what it was called, and I think there are probably still agencies that may be dealing with that still. People have come a long way with it, but I know that there's still some analysts, maybe in some smaller departments throughout the country, where they're still struggling, this is what I am and this is what I do, and so.
Yeah, it makes me think of what the job announcement looked like, right? Because if it's called administrative analysis, but then you're describing all this more tactical tasks, gets confusing. Don't get me started on some of these job announcements, because that's like what they're asking to pay somebody. I'm like, there's nobody in the country that has all those qualifications for that pay. But anyway, so it's fascinating when you read some of these job announcements.
It sure is. Yeah, agreed. So from that point then with narcotics, so I was there 2003 through 2009. And at that point, Minneapolis Police Department disbanded the narcotics unit. We like to joke about it. Oh, there's, no problem with narcotics in the city of Minneapolis anymore, so let's just disband it. Well,
congratulations. You did it.
Right.
No more drug issue in Minneapolis.
Exactly. Well, so that portion got absorbed with their violent offender task force. At that time, we had Lieutenant Andy Smith, who is now the Division Chief of Investigations for Littleton, Colorado Police Department. But at the time, for VOTOF with Minneapolis PD, Lieutenant Andy Smith, Sergeant Pat King, and Sergeant Matt Wintey. Those were the top guys that really lobbied to get me on their team after the narcotics unit was disbanded. They were familiar with my work and my work ethic and fought to get me on their unit. And so that's where I transitioned to in 2009, which was just, fantastic. Just another great group of guys. Nice. So from VOTOF, at that point, we were still located in downtown Minneapolis, kind of just a rundown building, which is typical. Couches everywhere and desks kind of strewn about, maybe a little cocaine sprinkled on the floor from evidence. No. But at the time, the FBI had started up their Safe Streets Task Force, and we partnered with them. So FBI started that in 2010. in the Minneapolis area. So it was FBI, it was Minneapolis PD, St. Paul PD, which is another sister police department. So you have Minneapolis, and then across the river is St. Paul. So they also joined this task force. And then the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the BCA, which is our state police department. So all of those agencies under one umbrella went to a newer building in Northeast Minneapolis where we were housed.
Yeah, for those that might not know what the Safe Street Initiative was or is, just let people know what it is.
Sure. So that's FBI's initiative that they wanted to bring multiple agencies together and work together on cases, on state cases as well as federal cases. So really leaning on your partners and kind of attacking crime in the different cities, the larger cities, which of course were Minneapolis and St. Paul.
And then what type of cases did you work on while you were on the task force?
So when I was at that time, I'm still with Minneapolis PD, and my role there changed from what it was before. I became very tactical, again, still sitting out with the guys. We had rows of desks. And then at that time, the FBI was kind of in a back area. They had a special lock on their door. It was kind of top secret feel to it when I first started. So my role, an average day basically, is logging in, and the guys would have GPS phone pings on their subjects, on their cases. And I would go into the program and monitor where our subject's phone was pinging, the geographic location, and communicate that to the guys out in the field. Typically, they were maybe doing surveillance, maybe doing a light follow on their subject. So I was very tactical, watching, like I said, the phone pings. We would have trackers on vehicles for cases. So I did a lot of that, a lot of phone analysis. Hello, Penlink. So
yes. Yeah, it's interesting. And somebody might be asking the question, well, why would you put a device on the car if you could just follow the car? Right. I know we had one guy in Baltimore. He drove like it was NASCAR in the streets of Baltimore. I mean, he drove crazy. So they basically didn't have any other choice because there was no way they were going to be able to follow him without being known that they were following him. What were some of the reasons that you all were putting trackers on the cars as opposed to just doing surveillance?
So for, obviously you go through the proper process, you've got your warrant and everything is in line with that. A pattern of life, a lot of times guys were not going to be able to work 24/7. So sometimes establishing a pattern of life for your subject is key when you can't have eyes on them all the time. So that was very helpful. Perhaps maybe an interdiction. Maybe your subject is heading out of state. Notice that from his phone records or her phone records that they're headed out of state. And so you've got enough PC and you've got your warrant, and that way you're able to really follow that person when you've established kind of a pattern of life for your subject.
So with the task force, are you getting access to all these different databases from all these federal agencies, state and local as well?
So with the FBI, being that we were task force partners with them, we were able to get a clearance. We had to go through background check and had to go through all kinds of paperwork. And we did have access to their systems. So I did use that, but boy, it was a bit overwhelming at first, just coming from a local PD. But yeah, looking at all the different databases and, their records management system in and of itself was a bit of a spider web as far as different rabbit holes you could go down when you're doing searches,
Yes, I'm just thinking right now when I was with the task force and trying to keep a handle on the username and passwords, because the passwords all had a different requirement. It wasn't like you could use the same thing for everything, and you had to systematically keep track, and you didn't want to get locked out. Right. And you have access to about 10 different databases with different usernames and different passwords.
Right. Yeah. You end up having an amazing memory because no one writes anything down. So, right. So I really enjoyed that. I mean, that was such a great, it was a great group of guys and gals there. I mean, we all worked together so well. We were very tight at work. You were able to get together maybe for a drink afterwards. Just a really well-oiled machine, just a really great group. It's some of the most favorite times that I've had. And being able to go out on surveillance with the officers and going out on different search warrants, and it was very tactical, very hands-on, and I really enjoyed that.
Wow, what a great experience having both that out on the field and in the office, bringing those two experiences together.
Right. Yeah, it was fantastic. It was great doing the work that you do as an analyst. For instance, I did a lot of phone records. That was kind of my deal, along with association charts and timelines, things like that. But to be able to get out and see some of these people that you have been doing so much research on, to be able to go out there and see that was just really great to kind of close that gap a bit.
For someone that is into doing telephone toll analysis now, I mean, did you have a certain process? Do you have any tips for our audience?
It's been so long since I do that. The FBI has our CAST, our cellular analysis survey team. And so they have amazing magical databases and mapping. And so we're so fortunate to have them at the FBI. But when I did do it, I really enjoyed PenLink. PenLink, you could take your Excel spreadsheet that you would get from your phone provider and dump it into there and do different analysis with that, different charts. And for me, that's what I enjoyed working with that.
So from here, you move on to the FBI. I'm curious to know that during your time here with the task force, I almost see it a little bit having the benefits of an internship. Whereas when you're an intern, someone sees your work, they see your work ethic, they see how you present yourself and get along with the team. And that has a big influence over when it's time to hire someone speaking up for you and say, let's get this person on their team. They work well with the team. Was that the experience that you had with this?
Absolutely. And you working on a task force as well, Jason, you know that. I mean, you've got to get along with people. You got to roll with things. But, it takes a certain type of individual to be in that environment. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, a lot of the agents I worked with the FBI there at the task force were just, fantastic. And retired special agent Julie Hunter, she kind of ran the different things within our task force on the FBI side, a lot of the logistics and business portions of it. And she's just been such a mentor throughout the years that she said, you know what, Mare, why don't you, put in for the FBI? We're hiring right now. So in my career path anyway, there's obviously a multitude of areas and avenues you can go down when you're applying. But for mine, what I wanted to do, you have to apply as an operational support technician, which is kind of your stepping stone. So that kind of gets you in the door for the FBI. And at that point, you kind of decide which direction you want to go. If you want to stay with intelligence, if you want to maybe get into more of a financial or maybe a community outreach, or, depending on what your interests are, that's kind of your launch pad, kind of your initial. And so that's what I did. I gave her my resume and she brought it to the main office and I was called for an interview. And in 2014, I was hired by the FBI out of the Minneapolis division.
Now, was the hiring process different from previous jobs that you had?
No, not at all. So you have your resume and you get called for an interview. And you go through your interview. It's a panel interview. Everybody loves those, right? So, you've got your similar questions that you get asked on, situation and action and response. But the one thing that's probably a little bit different is going and having a polygraph. No one's a fan of that, right? I mean, you can be the most honest, person and you walk out feeling like a criminal. So, but no, it was a great start. And I had that position for a couple of years. I was really hoping to get a staff operations specialist, which with the FBI, that is, I would say, more equivalent to a crime and intelligence analyst at a local PD or sheriff's office. So if people are trying to determine what exactly is a staff operations specialist, because I don't think the term really, you don't really know what that means, right?
But you're doing similar tasks as an analyst at a local PD?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. That's what I would equate it to. So the positions weren't opening up, which they're highly coveted and for good reason. And at the time, I was kind of looking at other avenues. I thought, geez, take a pay cut from Minneapolis PD to go to the FBI. Things aren't popping up for me job-wise, and I'm always kind of on the lookout, and I'm dialed in with all the analysts here in Minnesota throughout the state. We have MACIA, the Minnesota Association of Crime and Intelligence Analysts, that I belong to, and I had noticed there was a posting for a crime and intelligence analyst at Maple Grove Police Department, and that's a suburb of Minneapolis, and they have a lot of retail there. In fact, they are second behind Bloomington, which is where the Mall of America is. Mm-hmm. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to put in for that because the pay was where I wanted to be. I thought, you know what, I can kind of navigate that position to where I'd like it to be. Maybe I've introduced some tactical work there. Maybe it's not just crime analysis. So I interviewed, and out of 100 plus people, they selected me. I was blown away, obviously, just on the moon, just thinking, hey, I can make this position my own. And so some great individuals there, very instrumental. Captain Adam Linquist, Captain Dan Wills, and then Sergeant Trent McDonald. He was my sergeant in investigations. Trent McDonald was, call him Mac. It was just a great fit there for me. Really enjoyed the people there. However, after a couple of, as a year went by, they would try and plug me into different tactical roles, maybe doing some undercover ops where I could assist, on the radio. If guys needed license plates ran, I could fill in there, maybe do some different sting operations, assist with that. And so that kind of filled the void a little bit, but I was missing the big cases, the fugitives, the bank robberies, kind of the high profile cases. So theft from motor vehicle and credit card fraud, although very important crimes to investigate on a local level, just wasn't enough for me. And so I contacted the FBI. I was still close with quite a few agents there, and I had left on really good standing. I mean, it was very hard for me to leave. People were so good there, but I just felt I was wanting to go back, and be at a local level. But at that time, so I did reach out to the FBI, and now I should preface this, I am not what's called a job hopper. So for me, that was really difficult. It was really hard to, hey, well, you're going to do this. And then a couple years, oh, she's going to get tired of that. But that wasn't the case. I think I was, navigating through things myself and actually determining what it is I want to do and, where I can be most helpful and also happy. So I did return to the FBI in 2017. So, how many people can say they work for the FBI?
I know. I mean, you got the special sauce apparently, because they're like, oh, you left us and now you're back. So you must be doing something right.
Yeah. So I was very thankful for that. So I did return in 2017 to the FBI here in Minneapolis, returned as an operational support technician. And later that fall, there was an opening for a staff operations specialist. And I interviewed and was able to get that position. So I was over the top on that. Just, I finally felt like, okay, I've made it,
Gotcha. So then when you applied the second time, you had to go through the whole rigmarole again in terms of application and background check and all that other stuff, right?
When I returned to the FBI, I did a light background check. However, I did have to go through the polygraph again. So,
All right. Yeah. So I think it's interesting the spot that you were in at Maple Grove, because I think a lot of analysts, especially when they're first starting, they get in a position where, do I change jobs or do I change the current job? And what I mean by change the current job is I think in a lot of analyst positions with police departments, you have a lot of leeway They have a general idea what you're supposed to do, but there's not a lot of standard operating procedure dictating exactly what you're supposed to do, like in other realms of a police department.
Right.
So as an analyst, you have a lot of leeway in where you could go, where you can take the position.
Right.
And I do find it fascinating. It's a struggle, like how much effort should I take to make this position, as in your words, my own, versus this isn't working for me. I have to switch positions. I guess just generally, just some advice for anybody that's in that position currently.
Yeah, I think just really examining what it is you want to do, because at a local PD, you're going to have those crime statistics that you have to do. You're going to have reports put together for the chief, and that's necessary. I mean, he or she has got to justify having you out, as a position to the city council and the mayor and whatnot. So that is so important. So if you're able to be okay with maybe a half and half. I think for me, there was just more statistics and reports than I wanted to do. I felt my skills were more tactical. And so, I mean, at least for me with that, but like I said, the people I worked with they were so accommodating. They really were. It just, for me personally, just wasn't enough. But I think just having conversations with your sergeant, your captain or whoever it is you're close with there, and just really being upfront and honest, on what it is that you want. Maybe if you have some tactical things that you'd like to do, maybe bring it up to them. Maybe they aren't sure that you as an analyst would be interested in going out into the field or participating in an undercover op or, whatever it is tactical wise.
All right, well, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to get into some of your badge stories, and we're going to play Don't Be That Analyst as well, and then we'll finish up with some of your personal interests. You're listening to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Scott Eicher, and I am a retired FBI agent, and I just wanted to point out that FBI agents are people too.
Hi, this is Jason Elder from LEA Podcasts. I am proud to announce a new law enforcement analysis podcast, ACIA New Horizons Podcast from the UK. Will be hosted by Paige Cunningham. Paige, how we doing?
I'm very well, Jason. How are you?
Very well. Well, welcome aboard. Tell our audience a little bit about ACIA.
Sure. Okay, so ACIA is an association of crime and intelligence analysts, and it's a community of members from the UK and Ireland, and we encourage all our members to challenge how and why things are done within the intelligence sector.
So what is this podcast going to be about?
So it's going to be topic-based. So we will be speaking with individuals with diverse backgrounds who all work within the intelligence field. It's to provide a support network to improve analyst developments and to create sort of a critical mass to help implement change.
When is this podcast going to be published?
The podcast will be published the first Thursday of every month.
So you will be able to find the ACIA New Horizons podcast on our website. That is www.leapodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcast. And then Paige, one last question. What are your words to the world?
Be open-minded and allow me to network and promote the profession.
Hey there, everybody. This is Albert Mesa, and I'm here to ask you a very important question. Have you ever done a sit-along with the dispatcher? If the answer is no, and you're currently an analyst, you're missing out on a huge piece of the data puzzle. Not only will you open your eyes to how data is captured, entered, and coded, you'll see how calls are prioritized and dispatched and get a true feel for CAD data. You'll get to see it in a whole new light and use it as a tool in your analysis. And who doesn't want to sit with the true first responder who probably saved a life right before they sat with you?
Welcome back, Mare. Now I want to get into some of your analyst badge stories. And for those that are new to the program, the analyst badge story is the career-defining moment or project of an analyst's career. So yours has to do with a homicide dealing with the license plate reader.
Yeah, I've got a couple of them here, but that one, I was with the FBI here as a staff operations specialist. We had a fugitive that was wanted for second-degree murder out of Minneapolis here. And I should preface, so our squad, we, like as you mentioned at the beginning, we handle violent crime And under that violent crime umbrella, we have fugitives, we have bank robbery, we have bank burglary, cold cases, Hobbs Act. So there's a variety underneath there. And we also have task force officers on our squad. And so we work in conjunction with them. And at that time, Jason Hughes, deputy with Hennepin County Sheriff's Department, was our partner in this case. And so if there was a state warrant, he would bring that to the table. And if it met the FBI, the federal criteria of being violent enough, we would open up a case and be able to work that in conjunction with our task force partner. And so this is one of those examples. So there was a guy that was wanted out of Minneapolis, and we had a plate for him, a license plate he was likely using. And I ran it through license plate reader through, I think at that time it was directly through Vigilant. I can't remember if Thomson Reuters Clear had that through their investigative platform. So I was able to run that. And the analysts out there know that sometimes when you run LPR, I mean, sometimes you could get a hit maybe, it was a year ago. So it's deflating, right?
Sure.
Well, this one was that particular day, I kid you not, maybe a half hour before I ran it. I mean,
wow.
Talk about real time.
Yeah, nice.
It's like hitting the jackpot, if anybody goes to the casino or something, that's kind of that feeling you get with that. So I let our agent know, Special Agent John Gaynor, who is our fugitive guy, our fugitive hunter. He's just an extraordinary agent. I work very closely with him, gave him the info. He quickly contacted Tucson FBI out of Arizona because I located this vehicle I think it was at a hotel just outside of Tucson. And so the reason why I wanted to bring this up, only so exciting when you have a hit on a license plate, but how quickly working for the FBI, you're able to contact your agency, contact the office in Arizona and have those agents out of Tucson head out to this hotel or motel and locate the vehicle, which is exactly what they did. So having those resources, to be able to tap into and utilize is invaluable because they were able to locate the vehicle and arrested the suspect and had him extradited back to Minnesota. So that was exciting.
Well, it's also refreshing that there's a system in place to knock down a potential data silo, right? Because there's 18,000 police departments in the United States, we have a tendency to have all these different databases that are just localized.
Right.
And so it's refreshing in this case to see a situation where data sharing led to the arrest within a couple hours.
Right. Yeah, that was amazing. It's just, a great example of local and federal partners working together. I mean, that's just what we do every day. So it's fantastic. And we love those partnerships.
I'm actually surprised that there isn't more license plate readers out there.
Yeah,
right?
And it varies. I'm actually in my spare time trying to determine just the different states that have them, because within Minneapolis FBI, we cover Minnesota as well as the Dakotas. So North Dakota and South Dakota are very limited, I have found, for license plate readers. So they just don't have a lot of them. So that can hinder an investigation. But you go into more of the border towns, you head down to Texas or Arizona or some of the places out on the East Coast with the toll booths where you've got just a plethora of license plate readers. So that's very helpful.
No, I mean, the technology is there. The price of these, they got to be coming down, and it probably always comes down to storage space, right? And whatnot. But it just seems to me that in the last 10 years, I would expect them to be everywhere.
Right. And, a lot of it, too, depends on the state. They've got their different laws. Each state has their different laws. And so I haven't looked into it in depth as far as the Dakotas and maybe some of the other states, but do know that that's a consideration there, too.
Yeah, that's always interesting. And then can you get a license plate reader in a public system? Can you do it on private property? You get the okay from the landowner. There's all kinds of rules and regulation to it.
Yeah, a lot of avenues for that, for sure.
All right, well, let's get to your second badge story then. and this is dealing with a armed robbery and assault suspect.
Yeah, so the second one here, this one was very fluid. So we had an individual that was wanted for an assault, his name, and this is all public out there, and I believe we'll have a link from our U.S. Attorney's Office afterwards if folks are maybe more interested on reading about this story. But Hakeem Coles was wanted for, he had an assault at Cowboy Jack's, which is a bar restaurant in downtown Minneapolis. So he assaulted the manager there, showed up the next morning, assaulted her, took some stuff out of the safe, and fled. And so we took that case on, and this was in 2019, I guess September. And so he fled. And okay, we have no idea where he's going to go. We're monitoring and surveilling family members and friends here in Minnesota, but nothing was popping, nothing was happening. And usually when people go on the run, not usually, I should say most always, I create an alert on that individual in Thomson Reuters Clear, which is, it's a public records. There's different data sources, and they're compiled into an investigative dashboard for any of folks out there that maybe aren't familiar with that. I use that quite a bit. And so with an alert, what that means is that individual, so Hakeem Coles, I set up an alert on him. If anything changes with him as far as an address or a phone number or an arrest, I will receive an email on that. And so I set up the alert. I don't remember the time frame on when it was, but I do remember the date. It was September 18th. I woke up to get ready for work, and I looked at my phone, and I had an email that there was an arrest record for Hakeem Coles. And it was out of Jefferson Parish, which is in Louisiana, right in New Orleans there. And
Wow.
I was like, you kind of do a double take, am I reading this right? Did I enter his name incorrectly? Is this true? So I went into my computer and checked in the alert, and sure enough, there he is. It's him. And so from that, I pulled up Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office. They have an open, a lot of the jail rosters are open to the public. And so I went into Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office, into their jail roster, typed in Hakeem Coles, and sure enough, there he is. He's in custody. So but oh my gosh, there's our guy. And so I gave that information to the case agent, and he promptly called Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office and spoke with, I don't know if it was a deputy or a jailer at that time, but they were getting ready to release him. Apparently they had pulled him over on a traffic stop, and I think if memory serves, he had some marijuana in the vehicle and something else. So they were holding him, but they were getting ready to release him on a $500 bond. There was a warrant through Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, I believe, if memory serves, on him for this armed robbery assault that occurred in Minneapolis. And for some reason, they didn't see it, or, what have you. I guess they didn't see it in NCIC when they ran his criminal history. Now, I would imagine Jefferson Parish, being in New Orleans, super busy, right? Like, I just, people get surprised by that, but, I don't know. So they were able to hold him there. And the case agent, after talking with Jefferson Parish, it turns out Hakeem Coles had fled to Houston and had committed an armed robbery assault, just like he did here in Minneapolis, very similar, at kind of a bar restaurant place in Houston. And then from there, he fled to Louisiana, which is where he got picked up. So we were very, very lucky that this alert hit and acted so quickly with that. The next thing, or next caveat with that, with Hakeem Coles, so we did pick him up. He was extradited back. And being that this was a federal case, he was housed at Sherburne County Jail, which will house federal inmates waiting on sentencing. And so Hakeem Coles was there waiting for his sentencing. It was caught on camera that he had assaulted a jail deputy, a Sherburne County jail deputy. A horrendous, just a horrible assault from one of the cameras that was inside the jail. Pulled the deputy into a cell, and you can imagine what he did. I mean, just
Yeah.
horrendous. So we were able to get a charge on him. We talked with the AUSA, who was definitely on board. Yeah, so after everything was said and done, he did receive an assault on a federal officer. So all things told, 204 months in prison, 3 years supervised release, and a restitution of over 80 grand. So, and then he still is facing federal armed robbery charges in Houston. So
Yeah.
stay tuned on that.
And that's federal time, right?
Right. Yeah, that's no joke.
That's none of this double secret probation stuff you get at the local level.
Yeah, no, that's no joke.
Yeah, interesting.
So those are some two that I'm pretty proud to be a part of with our team.
Again, breaking down the database silos there could have been way different, but fortunately, in this case, you were able to contact Jefferson Parish and,
Right.
And get it all straightened out. So good
Yeah.
deal. Finishing up, in terms of your current position now, how many cases do you normally have on your plate and some of the tasks that you're doing now?
We're a very high-paced squad. We are C4 the bomb, and it is constant. There's something always going with the different violations that we work. We do have one of the best supervisory special agents, Brenda Bourne, who is extremely supportive of everything we do. She just keeps the wheels turning. You know, our team functions very well together, but, you know, my day can be a fugitive, maybe it's a lead from Maryland, so someone's here. Bank robbery, we've got maybe a serial bank robber going on. ATM bank burglaries, you know, everyone remembers the riots that happened here in Minneapolis last year in the summer. I mean, we're still, you know, working those cases. Got a crew out of Houston that is doing, you know, grabbing a tow truck and with a chain and pulling ATMs out. So my day it changes. It's very fluid, but kind of a reactionary squad. And so you just kind of have to be on the ready. But I would say, I mean, there's usually, you know, 5 to 10 per day that I'm doing workups on. I'll do a lot of tactical workups on individuals for cases. So I'm busy doing that, but we may have a missing person. So things happen and you got to be ready to just jump on it and work with your team, which, you know, we're all very close on our squad. So that makes it easy.
I guess it seems kind of daunting in a way, because you probably have access to many, many, many databases. To make that decision of what to run, when, and how far down the rabbit hole you go is certainly a decision that you have to make with each one of your projects. So do you have any advice there, or do you have a rule of thumb that you use?
You know, and well, just like with anything, you know, it varies. I use a lot of the common databases that maybe intelligence analysts throughout the country use. I use a lot of the same ones that I used when I worked with Minneapolis PD. Now, that's not to say that there isn't some things within the FBI as well, but I have found those with the type of cases that I work and the violations that they're most fruitful. I mean, your Thomas Reuters Clear, which is like I mentioned, your public source database, looking up different phone numbers, different addresses, family members. LexisNexis Accurate is another one that I really love. And what I love about that, similar to Clear but just different functions, is they will have law enforcement events in there. And I have found throughout the years that your law enforcement events, I mean, that can be a traffic citation. It could be maybe they were a witness at a theft or, you know, what have you. But the information that's in there is invaluable. You can find family members. There's juveniles listed in there, maybe a fight at a high school. So that to me is extremely valuable. I love working with the local police departments. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a member of MACIA, and so a lot of the people I've known throughout the years, you know, Nicki Hughes and Angela Backer-Hines, and these people are just fantastic. The relationships that you establish stay with you because you can call them up, or I can call them up, or drop them an email on something and get the info right away because they know I will do the same thing to them. And when you're working with local police department, they're going to see that individual more often than the feds will. You know what I mean? So they're likely going to have a more current phone number. So that's what I find. I mean, I kind of bounce around, but that's what I like to do. Open source is great. Social media, right? Facebook dubbed us a bit years ago when they took away the function for searching for folks with a phone number. So that was tough. But with Facebook, there's, everyone's on social media, everything's out there, right? So even if you're looking for a subject, what I like to do is look for the moms or the aunties, because they're going to be on there. They're going to have their photos at family reunions, at birthdays, at Christmas, and basically your family tree is laid out. So you can go that way. So those are some of the the tools that I like to use and have had success with.
Okay, great. Let's get into some of your advice for our listeners. If somebody has the goal of becoming an analyst with the federal government, what advice do you have for them?
My advice is to do it. I mean, if you're interested in it, they're hiring, apply. I think we're going to have the website everybody knows, www.fbijobs.gov, but, just try it. Or maybe you work with someone on a task force, or someone that works on a task force. Go that avenue, reach out to that person. Hey, I know so-and-so works with so-and-so at the ATF. Right. So kind of go that way if you don't want to do just cold right out of the gate on a website. Sometimes you feel like a number, you're lost. So it's always great to maybe have a connection, kind of not an in, but kind of an in,
I can tell you that on any application that you're going to have, written and oral communication are going to be two aspects that are evaluated. And I think that's why you've been so successful over the years, is because of your written communication and then your outgoing nature, as you described, of being able to talk to just about anyone. I think that has served you well over the years.
Yep, absolutely. You got to communicate it and you got to have integrity. I mean, you got to stand behind your word. I mean, your word means a lot. So saying one thing to someone and going back and doing a double take on that there's no place for that. You've got to have integrity, and it has served me well. And, my word is everything to me. So absolutely.
And then maybe just general advice for analysts. I usually like to ask people, what would be something to study right now that would be a good return on investment? Something to learn now because it's going to become important later down the road.
I think just familiarizing yourself with the different tools that are out there. If you're not really sure how to even start with it, maybe do some searching for crime analyst or intelligence analyst, or you could simply just give a call somewhere and maybe you can shadow someone. I've mentored people throughout the years. Sometimes it just takes an hour or a half hour. I've mentored a couple of police officers from St. Paul Police Department recently. They were looking to transition from on the street as a patrol officer to investigations, things like that. But there's so much, obviously, we all know on the internet, but even just like I said, contacting a local police department or, a federal agency. Sometimes people are open to that.
Yeah, I always tell people that, especially when I'm mentoring someone new in the field, it's a strange one, but keep an eye on metal prices, because as soon as certain metals go up, you're going to have thefts of that metal. As soon as copper prices go up, you can almost be guaranteed that you're going to have break-ins into vacant houses or wire being stolen. You can almost guarantee it as soon as it's worthwhile to steal that.
Right.
Start pulling it.
Yep. Kind of the catalytic converters and, the rage with that. So, yeah.
Then, Mare, let's move on. Let's play Don't Be That Analyst. This is a call-in segment for the show in which we ask people, what's your don't be that analyst, this is something that analysts have seen other analysts do, or maybe it's something that they've done themselves, but it's definitely a big no-no and is something you definitely should not do. Do you have a don't be that analyst?
I do. Don't be that analyst. I always say be approachable and be available. You got to get to know your investigators, your agents, your detectives. Some of these guys and gals are going to be pillars throughout your career. So be approachable. Get out there. If it's out of your comfort zone, then do it. You got to be available. Be ready to do stuff and offer, and just do it sometimes. Get involved.
It's interesting that you use the word approachable. This is a downside to a technology that is used a lot in our society now, and that's the earbuds. And when you're working and you're sitting there with the earbuds on and you're in your own little world there, you may come off as unapproachable.
Right.
I'll just throw that out there. If you're walking around the hallway with those on, if you're in the elevator with those on, if everywhere you are in the office you have those on, people are going to hesitate before contacting you.
Agreed.
Because they don't want to come off as bothering you.
Right. No, totally agree with that. We have a few of those at our office as well. So, yep.
All right. So we have 4 callers on the line, and the first one is Danelle. Danelle, what is your Don't Be That Analyst?
My Don't Be That Analyst is don't send out a product asking people to look for help to help solve you some crimes, and you don't include all of the information that might be necessary to help them help you.
I think that's an interesting concept because that gets into need to know. And how much information do you give out about your particular issue, your case, without giving out too much? I think there is a fine line between giving out everything and then just enough so to help people help you, like she's saying.
Right. Yep. No, I agree with that. You get too much and there's too many different avenues and it can maybe take you away from what it is you're looking at. So being specific and being direct and including what's necessary, I mean, that's just going to keep that focus going forward.
Yes. But I guess at the same time, you saying the only thing you're going to give out is like 3 digits of a license plate or something that's very obscure and no other information, you got to give analysts something to work with.
Absolutely agreed.
Next we have Noah. Noah, what is your Don't Be That Analyst?
The experience I had about not being that analyst is an interaction I had with a lieutenant in charge of investigations when I first started my career. I was doing some crime mapping and different things, and we were predicting and forecasting when the next strike I think a robbery series was going to happen. And he said, someday you're going to be able to tell me exactly when and where to be. And my response to him was, the only way I'm going to be able to do that, as far as I'm concerned, is if I'm the actual offender and I know when it's going to happen, or I'm going to be so rich because I'm so good at it, I'm going to be moving to DC and I won't be working for our agency anymore. So it really, don't be that analyst that one is afraid to predict and forecast, but at the same time, know the limits of prediction and forecasting and what it is you're capable of doing, and be honest about that.
It's interesting because you had mentioned Steve Gottlieb early in the show, and when I had him on the program, he said he didn't like prediction. He didn't like the word prediction. He said Use forecasting, because when you say you're predicting this, people think it's going to happen no matter what.
Exactly.
And you can certainly influence a situation. He talked about the idea that he told somebody, a group of officers, to be at a certain place at a certain time, and they flooded the area and most likely scared off the person.
Exactly. Yeah, that can backfire for sure. You want to know your limits for sure. I agree with that.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting, though, that there's this idea of predicting crime, that's certainly this little bit of science fiction of being able to predict everything that is going to happen before it happens.
Right. Well, we all have crystal balls in our cupboard, right, at work. So you can just grab that out.
That's true. That's true. All right. Next on the line is Lori. Lori, what is your Don't Be That Analyst?
Don't be that analyst. My advice is don't assume that everyone knows what your internal acronyms mean or your internal way of doing things mean. We all have ways that we do things. We all have those acronyms that we use. They're not universal. So give people a break and explain yourself when you're talking about maybe your data or the way that you do things. Just don't assume that everybody knows what you're talking about.
Working for the FBI, you probably don't have any idea what she's talking about, right?
Zero acronyms. Acronym overload. I'm familiar with that. All too familiar. So yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Yep, you gotta to be able to communicate to people. But I do think sometimes folks get very comfortable with what they're doing, and so you do kind of just moving forward with things. You're so comfortable with what you're doing, it's just second nature. And so, it's good to have reminders for that, to kind of explain things to people. I agree with that.
Yeah, but I always get caught with, oh, I forgot what that stands for. I know what
What?
it means, but I forget what it stands for, right? And you use the jargon so often, I was like, oh, I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but this is what it is.
Right. Or you get multiple acronyms, that are the same. It's like, okay, well, which way are you meaning it? What's the context?
Yeah, we need to develop an app for the phones that will just decipher what an acronym is in the federal government. We should probably trademark that. That'll be our retirement project, right?
I like it. I dig the energy on that.
All right, last one is Eric. Eric, what is your don't be that analyst?
Don't be that analyst that underutilizes the features in Microsoft Excel. If you're going to use Excel, don't use it to just create poorly formatted lists that cause the user to have to manually read through your worksheet. Make sure the search filter features are applicable to whatever data you're placing on the sheet.
I think what he's talking about there is the cell merge. And the cell merge is in Excel is something that is one of my pet peeves. And I actually, when I teach Excel, I tell people never to use it because it take away some of the functionality, being able to select a column or select the data if there's a cell merge. There's actually a way, if you want to center a header along a whole series of columns, there's a way to do it without merging the cells. I'll actually put in the links to this show a YouTube video showing you how to do that.
Great.
So there is a way around it. It's bad radio to try to explain it. I could probably try to explain it, but that's probably not going to be good for radio. So, but I guess the thing he's saying is know the limits of the software.
Right. Well, and you know what? There's so many trainings that are available too out there, free training. So yeah, get familiar with it and have it work for you, not against you. I agree with that.
Yeah. Very good. And I guess use it for what it's for too, right? There's certain reporting that you want to do, then that's a different program. But I do understand that smaller departments may not have the luxury to go beyond Microsoft Office. But
yep.
Okay. Well, the last section of the show, I do like to talk about personal interests. And I had mentioned in your intro that you enjoy the great outdoors. You put on here in terms of your interests, snowmobiling and target shooting. I was curious if you do those both at the same time.
Well, maybe in my dreams I do, but in reality, not so much. I like to do target shooting outdoors is my favorite. I've got my own AR. I really enjoy shooting. I like the preciseness of it. And then, snowmobiling. In fact, my husband and me and a few other folks have a trip coming up in a couple weeks. We're headed up to northern Minnesota. They call it the North Shore, right off of Lake Superior. So you get the lake effect. So you get the extra snow up there. We'll head up towards, if folks want to take a look, Lutsen is kind of a popular area. And then we'll snowmobile inland towards Isabella, and then there's another small town called Finland. So the trails are fantastic. I'm on my fourth snowmobile now. I've got a 2005 Arctic Cat. It's an F6. They call it the Black Widow edition.
Oh.
And there's only 1,000 of them made, so I have one of them, and
nice.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when it comes to snowmobiles and four-wheelers, because I think the majority of people, if they're on them, they're just using them in a very small area, right? You're going around in circles. You're not going very far. But then you go into a trip like what you're talking about. How many miles are you planning on going on the snowmobile on this trip?
A typical day will be maybe 120 miles, 100 to 120, depending on the temperature. I've snowmobiled in 20 below weather, and that's horrible. It doesn't matter all the gear that you have on. You're going to fog up. You're going to, your hands get cold, even with the hand warmers. And so that's not fun. So ideally, 10 to 20 degrees. 20 is being ideal for me anyway. But yeah, we'll probably put on a good amount of miles. So yeah, where else have we gone? UP in Michigan, Ontonagon. We've been up in that area, and that's fantastic. So yeah, it's a great way to get outdoors and kind of get through the winters that we have here in Minnesota. rather than just sitting inside. So
Yeah, take advantage of that snow. So do you prefer flat course, just enjoy the scenery, or do you like a little bit more terrain, a little bit more risk, or I mean not risk, or difficulty, I should say?
yeah, I like the curves. I like a lot of tight trails that have very sharp curves. You can kind of get into a groove with your speed at that point and just kind of kick it around. I like the challenges. There's been a couple of close calls, hitting some ice sometimes and just being able to recorrect and get back on your trail. But I enjoy the challenge of it. So it's been fun.
All right. Well, good luck. Have fun on that trip.
Thanks.
All right. Well, our last segment of the show is Words to the World. This is where I give the guest the last word, and you can promote any idea that you wish. Mare, what are your words to the world?
My words to the world would be personal responsibility. Have personal responsibility in everything that you do. Another, question your news sources when you're doing your work, when you're reading things. I mean, question where it's coming from. Sometimes stories, sometimes they're based on feelings, not facts. So question things and, have some personal responsibility and do the best you can with that, trying to get that information.
All right. Well, very good. Well, I leave every guest with you've given me just enough to talk bad about you later. I do appreciate you being on the show, Mare. Thank you so much, and you be safe.
Thank you, Jason. Sure appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you for joining us today on Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We hope you not only enjoyed the show, but also learned something new. For more information on our guests and information relating to today's topic, please visit our website at leapodcast.com. Special thanks to The Rough and Tumble for our theme song. For more of their music, you can visit their website at theroughandtumble.com. Also thanks to Kyle McMullen for our show logo. For more of his design, please visit his website at moderntype.com. The show is